So there are three levels of emotional eating work. And I'm just going to give a really quick introduction. About half of you have been in my programs in the past or are my programs now, and about half of you are new to me. So just by way of a very quick introduction, is I have been doing work around food, body, and dieting personally my entire life, professionally for about the past 4 or 5 years, 5 years probably now, time flies. Before that, I was a coach in other capacities. I had a very large network marketing team, which I built that business to pay for 2 adoptions. And before that, I was a Mayan abdominal massage therapist. So coaching women through issues around body comes very naturally for me because I am a very extroverted person, but I'm also fascinated with the human body. I have a degree in basically anatomy, exercise science, kinesiology, and my cadaver lab was my most fascinating class that I had, and I just have been enthralled with the human body. It's what led me to my massage career, and just fascinated by it, but also in a very love-hate relationship with my own, right? More just enamored of the possibility, but had this backwards motivation towards thinking that I was never good enough and that I could diet myself perfect or whatever, all the things that we talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot of those here today. So years ago, I lost an immense amount of weight. In my pictures, actually, in the group, there's a few before and afters left over from our last time, and I just left them, although I took the text that went with them out, so you can get that live. But my before and afters in the group, you can see it. And my 1 month weight loss was so insane. And it looks like more than it is because I was a lot of bloating, just appeared in there, and a lot of, just puff and water and everything else. But I lost somewhere around 28 pounds or something. I have an original scale picture somewhere. But anyway, people, I was, because I had this huge network marketing team, I was in the public eye, and so many people saw me lose this weight and asked me for help. And I was like, well, I don't really know even what I did. So I reverse engineered what I had done and realized that I had been ketogenic dieting in a really, really, really healthy way. Well, so my a lot of people on my network marketing team were struggling with weight, and we were in a weight loss company, so it made sense that if I could help them get the weight off, that all of our businesses would do better, right? So I started doing sort of just a completely volunteer lead through of what I had learned, and I didn't know anything other than, my personal development level at that time was very business money oriented, manifest yourself money and things like that never worked anyway. But that was all my whole spectrum was at the time. And so I came with that, and I said, I don't know anything about this other than this is what I did. Here's the eating plan. And I cheered them on, rah-rah them like I did my network marketing team, because they were my team. And women lost immense amount of weight. I mean, 65 pounds in 4 months kind of thing. I mean, just crazy amounts of weight. But all this time, by the time I was leading them through it, I was starting to struggle. And I was so frustrated because I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I found the holy grail. I found what I have dreamt of my entire life. I literally thought through my whole degree, through millions of anatomy books, I thought that it came down to finding the perfect healing diet for your body. I really thought that at the end of the day, that's what the Holy Grail was. And so I couldn't admit to anyone, including myself, that I wasn't even following my own plan because I was struggling with, I didn't know what at the time, what I would, realize is emotional eating, stress eating, all the things that I teach in my craving freedom matrix here now. Oops, there we go. But at the time, I really didn't know what my problem was. And I just thought, I'm an anomaly. I'm screwed up around food. Maybe they won't struggle. And I just held my breath. And guess what? Almost every single one of them struggled, right? And the weight came back on, and I was like, what in the hell is wrong? Here we found exactly what we've been looking for. And I realized there's, layer upon layer upon layer of other reasons that we eat that have absolutely nothing to do with hunger and hormones. Although that is one of the most important pieces on the craving freedom matrix, is to tame our hormones. But that is how all of this started. And I recognized that there was this chasm. And so I looked, I first went towards emotional eating books and work around, mindset and trying to what is the word that they call it? I don't teach it. Intuitively eat, intuitive eating, make peace with Doritos, bring them into your house and meditate with them, and you'll suddenly never crave them. Well, bullshit. That's that's a bunch of bullshit, right? If you've ever tried that, because we have so many other things driving our cravings, including environmental triggers and the way that the Dorito company, manipulates our brain to be addicted to that food and that kind of thing. But years and years later, here I sit with this immense, vast knowledge, and I just want to give it all to you to give you freedom. And what it boils down to is before you can apply any eating plan. It doesn't matter if it's mine, it doesn't matter as long as it's a hormone stabilizing one and you're not riding the blood sugar roller coaster trying to, lose weight on Twinkies or something. As long as it's a healthy hormone stabilizing eating plan, you still have to have these 5 fundamentals that I am going to teach you this week in place to succeed. So that's why I'm giving you these, so that if you decide at the end of the week to join my program or go off and do whatever program, you'll have these 5 fundamentals. And we build on these, of course, if we do work together, because this is just an introduction to them. But these 5 fundamentals will literally transform your trajectory of your life forward if you embody them. The other thing, there's 2 other things that I've thought about titling this. Stress eating just came about because that's the terminology everybody was talking about with, coronavirus, but I considered titling it something around, the getting back on track. So I love that so many of you posted in our group that's your concern and that's what you wanted help with. The other thing that I have considered titling this is something, and I'm open to suggestions on how to word it, but around just stopping passing on disordered shit around food through the generations. So that email that you accidentally got from me earlier from about 3 years ago, that email, I used to enroll over the phone into a $3,200 12-week program to work with me. And that's where that email accidentally came from. But that reminds me to tell you, in apologizing again for sending that out earlier, which was a total fluke, that what I got on the phone with hundreds of women. Not only did I get on the phone with hundreds of women to discuss whether or not that program was a fit for them, I received applications from thousands of women, and I had a questionnaire that I filled out. And I just looked back through this the other night. I go back to this kind of gold mine of where women are struggling that I have because I took applications to work with me for so long. And the number one thing that if I can break it down, it's so simple what everybody wants. And tell me if I'm wrong and there's something different for you. But the top things are to be a good example for my daughters and granddaughters. That's a really big one. To live a pain-free life. And the other one is to show up, to be able to say yes when I'm invited somewhere because I have something to wear that looks good and feels good. I'm not embarrassed about that. And then so it's pretty simple what we're after. And with what you're going to learn today, which I'm going to dive in and stop talking here, is going to help you make that transition. Because if you listen to what's behind those things that women told me, thousands and thousands of women that they wanted, none of that is to be a size 2, right? None of that is to, diet my way to my grave and never enjoy, birthday cake again. None of that has anything to do with that. But we get confused on a daily basis. And so I'm going to help you make that transition right now to a health forward motivation. Yes, Sam, you don't need to call me. Sorry, that was just a fluky thing. You can hear the replay in the beginning, but I was literally homeschooling and I was like, what can go wrong? It's a 2-word email. I don't need to send myself a test. I just moved all that text and put in the picture in 2 sentences, a reminder, and obviously I should have sent myself a test. But anyway, homeschooling is definitely kicking my ass. So that's a different story. Okay, so there are 3 levels of work when it comes to food, and I think I should write a book because these 3 plus these 5 fundamentals are so crucial. But the 3 levels of work when it comes to doing work around food are intervention in the moment. And I'm going to give you one of those for tomorrow if you brought your bucket or your bowl, and it doesn't matter if you didn't. That was just to remind me to tell you about that at the end of this. But intervention is like, I am having a craving right now. What the hell do I do with it? Because what's happening inside of the brain when you get that craving, I'm not going to go into a ton of neuroscience this week, but I'm going to introduce you to some things. What's happening is that is a midbrain hijack, and that's why it overtakes your common sense and your rational desire to be healthy. Your midbrain literally hijacks you. It's the same thing that happens when people have road rage or a temper tantrum, or my kid loses it, or I lose it back at my kid. Your rational brain gets hijacked. And so we're going to talk about how we have to work in the unconscious brain, because that's where all of this programming is happening. But the second sort of level of emotional eating or work around food, it doesn't matter if you call it stress eating, emotional eating, anything that has we'll just call it eating outside of true physiological hunger. The second level of work is introspection. If you're in my program, you also know it as information, and we're going to get to that on Thursday. But it's introspection, and I'm going to give you an exercise around that today where it's kind of this paradigm shift. It's like it's not necessarily going to help you in the next moment, but changing the way your brain responds to food because you're motivated in a different direction and you're focused on something different is really, really important for making longer term change, right? There's white knuckling it in the minute. How do I get through this? That's the first level. And the second level is like changing who you're showing up in the world to be. This is the beginning of making that adaptive change, right? It's not the technical, what do I do about a craving, okay? And then the third level is transformation, and that is work that I do with women. You know, takes time or in a concentrated one-on-one setting where we can just work directly through your stuff, right? Rather than having to extrapolate it through a group setting like this or that kind of thing. So transformation level work. So those are the three levels. Intervention, introspection, and transformation. And each day this week, I'm going to be giving you one or two of the first two, the intervention and the introspection, okay? So when we're talking about our behavior around food outside of true physiological, I actually am hungry, we're talking about an automated response to food triggers. Okay, this that I showed you a little bit earlier, the craving freedom matrix. You probably can't read it, but it's emotional, habitual in the middle, hormonal, and then environmental triggers. And all of these, even the hormonal triggers, which we consider hunger, but hunger's a little bit different in my teaching, all of these are happening in our automated unconscious mind. All of our behavior around food, and we're the big brain human species that we are, we're designed to work on automation. Right? This is how I can reach out, grab my water, pause, take a drink, and not completely lose my train of thought. This is how the doorbell can ring. You can carry on a conversation while you walk to answer the door and see what Amazon sent you, right? We are just meant to be, the way we got to how we are as a species is by automating things inside of our brain. Part of that is our response to food, and it doesn't matter whether it's an emotional response to food. A true textbook emotional eating is eating to soothe or distract or avoid our internal landscape. It really has nothing to do with what's going on outside of us. This is like, what's that saying? Life is 10 for 90%, 10% what happens to us, and 90% the way we react. The emotional eating is the same thing. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. It matters what your thoughts, emotions, and feelings are, and we eat to soothe, distract, and avoid from those. But it doesn't take very long to, feel tension or pain. Let's say, oh, I don't know, you're arguing with your husband, and it doesn't take very many times of you, you know, grabbing ice cream to distract you from how mad you are, because it does work, because it elevates your serotonin, your dopamine, your insulin, all these things that make you feel a little bit better in the moment. It only takes a couple times of doing that before your brain says, oh, when she feels this, we eat this and we feel better. And it skips all the steps of rational thought. And pretty soon you're arguing with your husband and you're in the refrigerator or you're at the freezer looking for ice cream. And you're like, how did I even get here? And then pretty soon you're at the bottom of the ice cream and you're like, what just happened? Like, how are all these steps happening? Because it doesn't take very long for emotional eating to become habitual, which is why habit is in the middle on my craving matrix, okay? And then the next kind of like reason that we eat outside of true hunger is the serotonin, dopamine, pleasure eating. And we push ourselves way too far and way too hard, and we don't take, leisure breaks in our society very well. And so the brain realizes, oh, if I can make her think about food, she'll stop and give me some pleasure. And so for me, this was really true with alcohol for a lot of years, which I've really struggled with for about 10 years. And what was happening was I didn't have any other way to turn my brain off when my kids walked in the door and to turn on parenting, which, takes a whole different adaptive skill set, right? And so I started to grab a glass of wine at 3:30 p.m. when they walked in the door. And that was my cue to shift down, get present, all those things. And it didn't take very long for that to become a very big automated habit. Whereas, I could tell the time by my wine craving, and that's another one is time. So, well, let's go to habits first. So, habits are, like I feel this, I eat this. Like I talked about how an emotional trigger can become a habit, but also time of day is a huge one. Like I said, 3:30 p.m. my wine craving, huge, huge, huge one. There's also environmental triggers like a sunny day on a Saturday when we're going to be sitting outside working in the yard. I don't want to deal with the dishes and the things that have to be done in the house, so I'd rather, drink a glass of wine in the afternoon and that kind of thing. So then there's also environmental triggers like this is akin to, have you ever had a memory and you're like, oh, actually, and it's usually international travel for me. It's like, actually, 20 years ago, I was in Serbia this time of year. And you're not at all consciously thinking about it because it's all happening in the unconscious, but that's an environmental trigger that's like, oh, the time of year, the time of day, the way the sun is in the sky, all of those things can become habitual food triggers as well. Okay. And then this is for high achieving women, this is a huge one, which is just plain piss poor planning, right? It's thinking that we're tougher than nails and we don't need to take care of ourselves, and then we realize, oh my god, it's 9:30 at night, I've just walked in from the office and I have nothing for dinner. Like, what are the odds you're going to make a good decision in that moment? Zero. No one is capable of that because you've used up every bit of willpower you woke up with by the time you got home at 9:30 at night, right? But we somehow assume that we're going to make a salad, right, at 10 o'clock at night and then, get a good night's sleep. No, we're going to open a bottle of wine and pop some popcorn or whatever it is, right? So time and planning is a really big one. That's a pretty easy technical fix because there can be some, just more planning that happens during the day. And then the last one is very much adaptive, which is secondary gains or subconscious gains. So there is a secondary gain. Secondary gain is like, well, let me just explain it and see if this makes sense, and then I can answer questions if not. But there's a secondary gain that everybody talks about in psychology, which is of the behavior. So for my wine at 3:30, my secondary gain was I was relaxing. And so I was really drinking to relax. I wasn't drinking, it could have been food, but I wasn't eating, obviously because I was hungry. It was to relax. So I had to find another way to learn to relax in order to not have that trigger take over every single day between 3 and 3:30. I had to find a new way to relax before my kids walked in the door. So that's the secondary gain of the behavior itself, right? Like you haven't eaten all day, and the secondary gain of eating is your dopamine does go up and you do feel better, right? It's like, yes, you fueled your body, but the secondary gain in your brain. The other level of secondary gain work that I do with people is around sort of the unconscious commitments we've made to stay heavy. And so these are things, and they're different for everyone, but they have a similar um, thread running through them. These are things like you've made some sort of a deal with the devil, like I'll get a new job when I lose this 30 pounds, or and you're stressed out about applying for a job or quitting the job you have, whatever it is. So no way in hell are you going to lose that weight because you've made this unconscious commitment that they're connected. Um, I've had people say, I'll have the confidence to start dating when I lose weight, or even, maybe leave a unhealthy relationship, but I don't want to lose the weight first. Well, no way. You've mixed up two subconscious commitments, and you have to unwind them in order to be able to proceed forward with either of them. Other secondary gains are things like, oh, this is one that I worked on and continue to work on. Showing up like this on camera is really, really petrifying for obvious reasons for a lot of us. However, I have a secondary gain around it, which it protects me from showing up like this by staying heavy, because I won't go on camera like this when my weight is up, right? So it protects me from what I'm afraid of, which is being attacked for being bold enough to go on camera. And I have a number of times in my past when I've been attacked in situations like this. And so I have this huge part of my brain that says, this isn't safe, this isn't safe. Oh, well, she won't do it if she's overweight, so let's keep her eating, right? And so these things get all twisted up inside of our brain. And so secondary gain work is really, really important when it comes to doing all of this work around food. Okay, so the reason that I was telling you those 6 different drivers of eating outside of true hunger is because none of those are in our conscious brain, right? Having having a craving at 3:30 p.m. There's not a conscious trigger, right? It's like getting hit by a memory or a flashback or something when you're out. None of that is happening in our conscious mind. It's all happening in our unconscious mind. So the reason I'm telling you that is because that's where this work has to be done. And then you combine all of that, the fact that all of our food triggers are 99% of it in our unconscious mind, with the fact that our ability to reach a goal is determined by the beliefs we have about reaching that goal in our subconscious mind, right? Those secondary gains and things like that. So you can see that the work that we have to do around food, it has to be in this unconscious level, because it's not, like I said in the email this morning, it is not a matter of lack of desire. It is not a matter of lack of understanding. It's not a lack of consciously knowing I'm killing myself when I eat, 3 bowls of cereal at 10 p.m. instead of going to bed. It's not a lack of conscious knowledge, right? It's happening inside the unconscious mind.